All right, distance formula. So the distance formula is really easy once you have the formula and once you learn how to plug it in. We're going to say distance, d, equals big square root x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. That's something you need to write down. You need to have that on a note card or on a piece of paper so that you can have it while you're doing homework. This is the distance formula. This finds the distance between 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2. Now this formula actually comes from the Pythagorean theorem, the a squared plus b squared equals c squared thing. We'll go over that in class and I'll show you how that kind of relates to this. So let's look at number 2. We're supposed to find the distance between the pair of points and round our answer to the nearest tenth, right? So that's 1 decimal point. So here's my x1, here's my x2, here's my y1, here's my y2. So my distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So plugging into that, I'm going to have my square root of -4 minus -7 squared, -4 minus 2 squared. But really the -7 is like a plus there, so this is going to be big square root again. I have 3 squared plus, that'll be -6 squared. Whenever I go ahead and square these, I'll have 9 plus 36. I add those together and I'll have 45. And I'm going to type in the square root of 45 into my calculator, and I get 6.7. So that's how far apart those 2 points are. Let's look at number 2. x1, y1, x2, y2. I have my big square root. I start off with my x's. I have x2, 8 minus x1, so minus -6 squared, plus y2 is 5 minus -6 for y1, and that is squared also. So I turn these both into addition signs because they're double negatives. The 8 plus 6 gives me 14 squared. The 5 and 6 give me 11 squared. So I'm going to type in my calculator, 14 squared plus 11 squared, and that gives me 317. I square root 317, and I get 17.8. That is my distance. Something that can mess up here is whenever you go in, and if you go in too early to type things in your calculator might not be able to do order of operations as well as you can. Some people are able to learn really quickly how to do the parentheses in there. What I suggest is just do little pieces of the problem. Don't try to type the whole thing in the calculator, just type in little pieces of it. So let's move on. Let's look at number 4. x1, y1, x2, y2. My big square root, I have my x's, so I'm going to have 0 minus -7 squared plus -1 minus 0 squared. So this will be 7 squared plus -1 squared. So 49 plus 1 root 50. The square root of 50 is 7.1. There's our distance. Number 5, x1, y1, x2, y2. Now notice that I'm writing these in on all of them. Whenever I do them on my own, I normally write them in 2. If you do a bunch of them in a row, maybe you don't have to. But if you don't, how do I want to say that? If you haven't done this problem like in the last 5 minutes, it's probably a good thing to write the x1 and the y1 part. That way you can kind of remember and know where things go. I think it's very helpful to label the points. So I'm going to have x2 minus x1, so negative 1 minus 5 squared plus 5 minus 6 squared. So this will be negative 6 squared plus negative 1 squared. 6 squared is 36. 1 squared is 1. So I get down to the root 37, and that is 6.1. Right, we're rounding to 1 decimal point. My calculator actually showed me 6.0827, but I want to round to this spot there. So the 8 tells me to round up, right? All right, let's look at number 6. 2 problems left. x1, y1, x2, y2, my big root. x2 minus x1, negative 5 minus negative 1 squared. And then y2 minus y1 will be negative 6 minus negative 4 squared. So negative 5 plus 1, right, will be negative 4 squared plus, and then we have negative 6 minus minus 4 will be a plus there, so that'll be a negative 2 there squared. Squaring those, I get 4 squared is 16, 2 squared is 4. Combining those, I get a 20, so root 20. So square root of 20, oops, no, it's a square root of 2. Square root of 20 gives me 4.5. All right. Number 7, last one. Here's x1, y1, x2, y2. Again, I open the big root. I'm going to do x2 minus x1, so 0 minus negative 3. Right, that's going to turn into a plus there, squared. And then y2 minus y1 will be negative 5 minus negative 8 squared, right? And that'll turn into a plus again. So this is really 3 squared. Oops, I forgot a little plus sign there. I'm sorry. There should be a little plus sign. And then I'm going to have negative 5 plus 8 will give me 8, 7, 6, 5, 5. I'm sorry. That's supposed to be a 3. 3 squared like that. So then I'll have 9 plus 9. That's 18. I type in my square root of 18 into my calculator, and I get 4.2. There we are. I think these are normally pretty easy. We have the formula. It's just a matter of doing the algebra to plug them in. If you have trouble with the algebra, you should talk to me. But I think this will be pretty decent for us. So, all right. Make sure that you have this formula listed somewhere.